Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Baka podcast.
Baka. It's amazing how every time you open your mouth, you prove you're an idiot.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Baka. We are a formerly true crime podcast that switched over to talking about anime. That's not true. We do talk about anime, though. We watch anime and then talk about it like we're a book club, and then we turn the comment sections over to our audience because we are three idiots who are usually wrong about our opinions. And we openly admit that, and it's kind of refreshing not to have any accountability for what you think about anime. But we do put all the pressure on you, the listening audience, so thank you for joining us. We are talking today about the anime Astra Lost in Space, and to talk about it, I need the help of my co-host. So let me introduce them. First off, we have the robot to my Will Robinson, Jeremy.
Danger, Dr. Robinson, danger. Oh my God, that brings back memories. Oh.
And which decade of memories are you thinking of? The original show?
The original.
The 90s movie? Or now there's a Netflix show. So every generation gets a Lost in Space.
Yep. Doing pretty good. Just super busy. Classes like past midterms, so I don't have time for much of anything else. But I did manage to watch this anime. It was actually a nice distraction from
we haven't hardly talked to Jeremy in 2 weeks. Me and Jason have just been like gabbing like girls, and then Jeremy will show up and be like, "That's really cool, guys. Okay, bye."
Yes, exactly. Gotta dive back in. Yep.
The other host is the Dr. Smith to my Will Robinson.
Oh.
How you doing?
That's from the movie, though, right? It's the movie Dr. Smith.
Oh, no, I think of the 60s TV show.
I was about to say, I need to be Gary Oldman, so.
Nope.
I have been deep into the Outer Worlds. I actually wasn't going to pick it up, but I saw a couple videos. A friend showed me a promotion, so I picked it up, and I'm getting such Knights of the Old Republic vibes from it. It's fantastic. The shooty is there are so many elements of it that feel Fallout 4-ish, as far as just mechanics, like the shooting, the terminals. But they've got this so they came up with the VATS system back in the day, Obsidian did, and their new VATS is like this time dilation, so it feels almost perfect dark, where you get that the time slow effect, and so it's been a blast.
Sweet. I want to play it really bad. Wish I had time.
And my name is Troy. New Call of Duty came out. It needs some work. I watched the new Lion King. It needed facial expressions. And other than that, November is going to be Star Wars month for a nerd like me. There's a new book, new game, new TV show, and then next month a new movie. And so basically, I'm just loving life right now. But then we watch this anime too, guys. You'll notice in our show notes that I've laid out the character names instead of all. We meet them all in the first episode, but just so you know, we're gonna slowly reveal the twist when we get to them in the plot. Mm-hmm. Fair enough? And hopefully, fair enough. When we talk about the characters, we don't have to reveal that. But before we go into that spoiler section, let's do our non-spoiler reviews. Jason, this was your pick. What did you think?
I surprisingly enjoyed it. As soon as it got a bit teen drama, romancy. That's not really my jam for any kind of media, let alone anime. This did a pretty good job of it. I liked I think what helped it is it focused a lot on story. Yes, there was a bit of back and forth, but some of the subterfuge that happened between the team members and who's the Clue-esque kind of investigation that was going on between the different players was pretty good, and the twists and turns of the story were satisfying, and I think they executed it well. So I think Jeremy put it really well. It's not in my top 10, but this was a fun ride, and I would definitely say watch it if you can.
All right, Jeremy, what'd you think?
It was fine. Yeah. Not bad. At the very beginning, I posted in the chat, and this was partially to taunt and partially true.
Oh, I know. You son of a...
is this Kiznaiver in space that Jason picked? Because every time that they went on their emotional, like, our friendship matters so much, and we're a family and everything, and just lovey-dovey and everything, I was just getting these strong Kiznaiver vibes, and I'm just, ooh.
No,
I kind of, yeah.
It was almost to the point where I thought they were going to put their hands together and draw a smiley face like in Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah, exactly. And they kind of almost did that a few times, where they did like the hands together thing. But in the end, I think it actually bore itself out to have less of a focus on emotional things and the connection, so much as, like you were saying, just developing an interesting story and having interesting characters bounce off of each other. So it was okay. It was okay. I don't want to steal your thunder, Troy. I know you got one thing you want to say there, but yeah.
I have no thunder. Steal
no
thunder
thunder
away. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, your thunder that I'm going to steal is that it would have been really nice to see more stakes. Everything was so simple, so easy.
Not like in Cow, but like Danger.
Yes, danger stakes.
Yeah, there was lots of cow.
You have to chase them down.
They ate lots of meat.
They did.
Yeah, and so for my review, pretty much the same with you guys. I actually didn't enjoy the beginning. It was the characters I felt were cheesy and tropey, and I was like, well, what are we getting into? Even for me, who usually can stand that stuff more, it caught me off guard how much it was. And it really kind of wormed its way into my heart, and it gave me a Danganronpa feel, and not for the insanity of Danganronpa, but for that mystery conspiracy vibe that Danganronpa has, where you're like, okay, but what's really going on here? Yeah, I get what you're showing me on the surface, but there's clearly something behind. And as I was watching this, that's what kept me going. And they actually did really good cliffhangers at the end of each episode. And by the time you're in the second half of the show, you don't want to stop watching. You're like, okay, whoa, we can't stop there. What did that mean? I need to know. And so it does a really good job of bringing you in. I think it had a bit of a rough start, but once you get going, it's really great. And we'll talk about the characters, but it actually does something really interesting with characters who I found grating. And then by the end, I'm like, I love all you guys.
Kiznaiver!
Kiznaiver forever.
Troy, Jeremy, I'm sending you coal for Christmas.
Oh, I gotta have something in the stocking.
I'm sending you a copy of Kiznaiver.
Oh God, no! Coal.
I will drive to your house because you're not that far.
Okay, so let's go on to the intro and the outro. What'd you guys think?
They were so few and far between. Which I found interesting, because normally with serial anime, it's every episode, and this one was like, I don't know, it was refreshing to not get it so often.
They had a lot of story to jam into 12 episodes, so they just skipped end credits a lot. Like, okay, it's playing, the credits are playing, but we have to keep going in story. We have to show a twist right now.
We got to get these scenes now.
Well, I mean, they even doubled up on the length of the intro episode and final episode. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yep.
But the intro I liked. It was okay. Nothing to write home about. I actually don't remember the outro. Like, I watched it twice, and I don't really remember it. I guess it was fine.
I don't remember either one.
I won't be able to, like, right now I could probably hum a few bars of the intro, but in a couple days I won't be able to. It's not going to stick. It was enjoyable enough of a song and lighthearted, and I liked when they played it in the final episode, but, like, you can. There's a really good, it shows all the character names in the intro. I actually really like the visuals of the intro. It did a really good job of letting you know, like, okay, here's our main characters. There's even a clue to one of the mysteries in there that we'll talk about in the spoiler section. And so I thought it was pretty cool. But yeah, and I don't really remember the outro either. I'm sure I know I watched it every time, but I more. Oh no, I do remember the outro, and I did really like the outro because they would show clips, not in the episode, of like the main character doing push-ups with a girl on his back, like stuff they were doing in between the story, and it was actually really cool to be like, oh, that's kind of cool that's happening.
Well,
and
yeah, because it was relevant for the episode. I remember that now. Yeah, because it changed every time. Yeah, that was cool.
Actually, one of my favorite moments in those outros was Zach and Kadata with their shirts off, like about to wrestle.
Yeah, they were getting ready to do
It's like, oh, that makes sense too. Testosterone-filled teenagers. They got to get their aggression out somehow.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. That was one of the pictures.
Yeah, it was.
Okay. So yeah, now that we all had this memory of the outro, let's go to the spoiler section and see if we can remember the whole anime.
How dare you?
So spoiler warning, from here on out we'll be revealing everything about characters. Now there are major twists, and like we set up, we're going to reveal them at the time, but they also might slip out when we're talking about characters. No one's going to get like buzzed and punished if they do slip out. You have been spoiler warned. If you want to solve the mystery and go along with the twist, you should watch the anime yourself. Fair warning.
Wait, right. You've kicked me out of chat before.
Yeah. Okay, let's go. So
standing threat.
This is an anime set in a futuristic world where they're able to go to space, and we start with our main, one of our main protagonists, and kind of, I guess, the audience point of view. And this is Aries. She's a pink-haired girl. We will find out later she has a photographic memory, but she's basically going on the annual high school trip, which is being put in a group with other students and going to another planet and camping there for 5 days and then coming back. And
so instead of a camp by the lake, they actually get sent to another planet.
Right. And I'd say it's a senior trip, but I don't think they're seniors either. I think it's just part of the school. So this is our first character, and then we're going to talk about her. What'd you think of Aries? Jason.
I like how she serves the story. I didn't really attach to her too much as a character. She was too smart in some respects, and then she was too dumb in other respects. Mm-hmm. Her mental capacity was just so inconsistent. It's like on one hand, I'm naive about everything about this issue, but on the other hand, I have a photographic memory and I can remember events that no one else can. But I mean, like I said, she served the story well, and I did like her relationship with Kanata, so she's okay.
Yeah, it was exactly the same for me. I was gonna say exactly the same thing. There were moments where she just seemed to have this intuitive ability to say the right thing and do the right thing and pacify crowds, and other times when she was just a complete social klutz and didn't understand what was going on. And it made me wonder, are you smarter than you seem? What's going on? But I don't know. She was really just, as far as for me, she was just there for the story too. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't, not one of my favorite characters by any means. I spent a lot of time paying attention to her. She definitely seemed like the oddball out of the group, even though everyone's odd. There's, and we'll talk about more later why, but she definitely didn't seem to fit with everybody else. And So I was like, okay, that's interesting. But the only reason she wasn't is because she wasn't as interesting as all the other characters. That's kind of how she was standing out. And I'm like, now in retrospect, when I look back, I'm like, other than being important to the plot, I could have, I wouldn't have missed you. I probably wouldn't have. And that's kind of a bummer. But I guess I liked her romance. The romance in this anime was hit or miss for me, and there was some funny moments, but I didn't ship anybody really.
What? Troy?
I mean,
ship anybody in a teen drama romance?
Right?
You feeling okay?
That's what I was saying. Like, maybe I was overly focused on the mystery, or maybe I'm sick. I don't know.
You're off your game, man.
Okay, so she goes to the airport, and we do learn she is a bit of a super klutz. Like, her luggage keeps breaking open, and she actually gets robbed by a guy on, like, a single-wheel motorcycle. Yeah. And this teenage boy jumps in to save her, and he has, like, these anti-grav shoes, so he does this super running, flying kick, drop kick, lands on the guy, and breaks his shoes. He hits him so hard, and saves her purse, and then immediately gets arrested by security for attacking someone who didn't see what happened.
Worse yet, the security is like these 3 like Roomba droids with extendable arms, and it's stupid looking. It really makes this first part, you're like, is this setting the tone for the whole anime? Because this is really dumb.
And honestly, this character had a very shonen anime character vibe to him. Like, this whole scene is very silly, very, I'm gonna save the day, here I come.
And you meant to say, like, powerful drop kick or something like that, he messes it up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and he's playing off as kind of silly and dumb. The whole scene is played off as silly. This definitely did set a weird vibe. I agree with Jeremy 100% there. But this is our other main protagonist, Kanata. What did you guys think of this character?
I think Jeremy mentioned in pre-show that, he was way too tropey in the beginning and kind of warmed up to him. I very much felt that way. He was super tropey, but what was nice is we got a lot of internal monologue from him as well. And we also, through the twists and turns of the story, we learn, more about why he is the way he is. I bought it. And I actually ended up really liking this character.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything kind of seems to come too easy for him at parts. And he's always succeeding, and he's always bringing people together, and he's always cheering them all on, and everybody's responding to it. And that was really bugging me. But there's a turning point where there actually is a consequence, and, the things that he's having to sacrifice in order to do this. And Troy is frozen. Oh, no, there we go.
He was just really still.
Oh, okay. That was impressive. And so, there actually was a sacrifice for him to be able to do it. It did cost him something. And to me, that moment was pivotal. And I mean, we'll get into what happened there later. But up until then, I found him entertaining, but I didn't really like him. At that moment, he became my favorite character as far as this selection goes. Not exactly a super high bar, but the highest here.
This actually is true for a lot of the characters, but Kanata stands out the most. And I agree with what you guys said. I found him super cheesy, especially in the scene and in the first couple of episodes. I'm like, man, you are hard to root for. You are hard to handle. But in retrospect, all the characters feel the same way. And just like the characters, it kind of wears you down, and they provide adequate reasoning for his attitude. Like, he's clearly projecting an attitude for a reason. He's being cheesy on purpose. And this is a character who has every time he rescues someone, tells them, you did a great job. And at first I'm like, man, that's kind of silly. And then by the end, when he's saying it, I'm like, oh God, you're such a cool guy.
Yes, exactly.
And when the crew the other characters start picking up his cheesy mannerisms because they realize the value in them. And it
Survival
really
tip number 4.
it really gives such important weight to why he was annoying in the first place, and it endears you to all that stuff. So it's such a I don't know if it's on purpose or if they did it well or if it just worked out that way, but the fact that I feel the same way about this character the other characters do throughout the anime arc is fantastic. That's so cool. And
I really do think it is writing. I think that the writer has a real talent for this because he does it with not just Kaneda, but he does it with a lot of things throughout this. It's very impressive.
If you stand up on your 2 feet, you'll be standing. It's like, okay, did you learn your mannerisms from Madden?
in the game. It's in the game.
Throw that football into the receiver's hands. It's a touchdown.
I did English dub. Jeremy, I'm assuming you did sub.
Yes.
Jason, which one did you do?
I did dub.
Okay. Just because some voices were a little odd. Is all I'm going to say. But Kanata's voice I liked, and Ares' voice I liked. All right, back to the story. Ares then joins with the rest of the group that she will be traveling with, and we meet all these other characters, and I will list them out real quick. Besides Ares, and she's late. There's Charse, who is like, I think he's supposed to be, we're supposed to think he's like French. He's definitely European, blonde. Yeah. There's Yunhao, who's a girl with long, dark hair and bangs over her glasses, and very shy. There's Luca, who's a kind of an effeminate boy who's like, I'm going to be everyone's best friend. Olgar, the guy in the ski cap who's rude to everybody.
I'm nobody's friend.
Kitri, the Valley Girl, with the classic Valley Girl. Oh my God. And her little 10-year-old sister.
Jason's favorite.
Phoenicia, who's they call Funi. So these are all the characters we meet really quick, but we don't, other than what I just said, we don't really get much of a sense of them. And we will be talking about all these characters.
I'll just say, the first 10 minutes were rough. Like, actually, even the first 20 minutes, I was like, I don't know if I can watch this, and I picked it.
Yep.
You could literally just be like, trope, trope, trope.
Yes.
Trope. Okay.
Yep.
Got them all.
And you also know, honestly, at this point, I'm like, oh God, every episode, like one character is going to have their moment and get over themselves. I'm like, oh, this is going to be a long anime.
and it kind of does that sometimes.
It absolutely
really does.
And it wins you for some reason. I don't know why.
Yep.
And then Kanata shows up, carried by the same security guards robots that arrested him.
Yet more silliness.
Yeah. He comes in like riding on them, trying to make this grand entrance. They start talking about who should be captain, and he's like, "Oh, it should be me, me," and they're like, "No, you're clearly an idiot." And he's like, "Me." They get told. So the thing is, the reason there's a 10-year-old on them is they've been given a task on their camping trip, a trial to take care of a 10-year-old on the camping trip. If they do that, they pass the whatever this is supposed to be.
Yeah, because I guess every camping trip group has a special trial that none of the other groups have.
That's what it's insinuated, but if that's not true, it would also make sense because it does kind of sound like this was extra.
Yeah.
Luggage. Well, they specifically call that out in this little group setting. The like dude with glasses.
Yeah, right, but later they say, do you know how hard it was to arrange that?
Right.
Yeah. Specifically, I bet it was hard to arrange actually sending another person as the task. I bet you the other tasks probably had something inanimate or something that they were supposed to deal with.
Build a shelter.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
They get on the ship and they're basically they go into hyperspace. We learn about Kanata and how he's wanted to go to space for a long time. We learn he had a teacher who was a hero of his. He used to be a track star and then has now decided he wants to go to space because that's what his teacher inspired him to do. And then they get to the planet. They're all in their spacesuits. They're dropped off. Their luggage is dropped off. And basically the teacher's like, peace out. See you in 5 days. And they blast off. And then like 5 minutes into this trip, this sphere of light going into a black hole appears. It sucks up Luca first, who touches it. He gets sucked up into it, and then it starts chasing the rest of them. Kanata told them to put their space helmets back on, so that's lucky they do. They all get swallowed up, and when they wake up, they're floating in deep space. And there's a planet below them, and then they're all freaking out, and then luckily, there's also a ship there. Now, we now know why the ship is there, and we will discuss that a little bit more, but do you guys feel it's still completely coincidental and lucky? And is that too much? Or what are you guys' thoughts on the fact that they come out of a wormhole and we find out thousands of light years away and there's a spaceship waiting?
In order to make a cohesive argument, I would need to spoil like 2 or 3 things. So what I'll say is it's plausible, unlikely, but now that I've seen the whole thing, I buy it. But when I first saw this, I was like, a ship just sitting there? Really? That not only works, has an ability to gather material to power its drive, and it's got faster than light, a working faster than light drive, was a little much for me in the first episode. But now I've seen the whole one. Probable, unlikely, but I'm willing to buy it for the sake of the story.
I think for me, I actually bought into it okay in the first episode because my first inclination was, oh, somebody's supposed to be here. Something malfunctioned. Something happened that wasn't supposed to happen.
Right, like they were sent. They were literally sent to the ship, right? Like that was your thought. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my thought, and I kept waiting to find out like where they would go. And in the story, they kind of came up with like how did they reason that why the ship was there? They kind of came up with a similar reason, like this ship was here for somebody.
Or this was our actual trial.
Or exactly, that was another thought I had was maybe they weren't actually supposed to be doing anything on the planet. Maybe the trial was going to be in a spaceship or surviving on this other planet or something else. But it seemed like it was justifiable within the story at any given time.
Okay.
What about you, Troy?
I go back and forth on it, honestly. I've been thinking about it since I finished the anime, especially since I got the explanation, and like, I guess it's okay. And I honestly was thinking maybe I'm just not fully understanding it, and then I'd let you guys explain it to me. so
when
so
we
I'll
talk more about the
I'll bring it back
we
up.
can revisit it.
Yeah.
Well, I actually like Jeremy's explanation better now that I'm thinking about it. So.
They manage to get inside the ship, and then they realize that one of them is missing, and Ares not only has her suit rockets malfunction, but her communicator has malfunctioned. So Kanata...
Actually, that's how the anime opens up, right? Is her
right. Yeah, it's her in
space.
space freaking out that she's alone. She's terrified of being alone, which I thought was going to be a bigger thing, honestly, because she clearly has, like, her whole thing is like, I'm here to make friends. I just want to be best friends with all of you. She's running around to everyone like, I'm going to be your best friend. And then when she's alone in space, she starts having a panic attack at the idea of being alone, not floating off in space. So I thought that was going to come back, and it doesn't really.
And this is also for me what helped to like establish improper expectations, I guess I should say, for this anime is the fact that, I didn't look up what genre it was. And so the way it opens up with this pink-haired girl floating in space, gonna die soon, I was like, ooh, okay, so Astra Lost in Space. Are we gonna lose characters? This is gonna be really interesting. This is gonna be an interesting thriller of them trying to survive and stay alive. And then, nope.
No.
I just had to completely recalibrate.
Nope. Kanata does what Kanata will do multiple times throughout this anime. He volunteers and he goes to save her. So they attach him to a cable. He flies out to get her. Can't reach her. The
thrusters are almost gone, right?
Yeah.
They're like, your thrusters will get you there, but you won't have enough to get back. So we're going to attach a cable to you. You go out there and grab her, and then we'll pull you back. But when he reaches her, the cable goes tight and actually pulls him back, and he has to detach, goes and gets her, and then shoots them back. And they're like, yeah, you're going to miss by 10 feet because they're just going to float to the ship, but it's not. He didn't aim right. And the other
A
characters
common
then
male problem.
form they form a human chain and manage to catch him and bring them in. When they get on the ship, like Jason said, everything is functional. It can go to light speed. They find out I wrote the number down somewhere, but
5,000.
5,000 light years away from their home. And it's going to be a 3-month trip at best. And they only have food for 3 days. They panic a little bit, but then they come up with a plan. Okay, what we'll do is we'll fly to these 5 different planets on the way. We won't be able to take a direct course. We'll have to go from these 5 different planets, and we'll gather food at each of them to enough to get to the next planet, and then we'll eventually get home. And that's the big plan. And that's what they'll do. The radio is destroyed, and so they can't call out. And on a plaque on the front of the ship is the word something something Astra. So like, let's name the ship Astra, and we will talk about that later.
Yeah.
One thing that did bug me a little bit, and it's a small detail, of course it's gonna bug me, is it took a little over 120 days to get back, but that's 3 months, and that was a straight route. They didn't take a straight route.
I thought I saw 156 on the screen.
Oh, you know what? You're right.
I actually was writing down days. It did get that.
My bad.
And I actually missed a character when I listed him. There's also Zach, the white-haired genius boy, who's friends with Kichi. Mm-hmm. And he's like, hey, I also have a pilot's license, and I can fly the ship. And he's the one who's basically, like, doing all the work. But they make Kanata the captain.
Right. Yep.
Right. I thought we were going to take, like, much longer to get to the planets, but we're on the next episode. We are on the first planet.
In fact, very little happens in just space flight. Most of the story happens on planet.
Yeah, which is so weird because, space flight's claustrophobic. It's the time where people get on each other's nerves.
It's a pretty big ship.
Yeah, I guess, but I mean, that's what do they call that? There's a term for it, but it's common in naval
cabin
vessels
fever.
And stuff. Yeah, I kind of was expecting to see some cabin fever, and we never really got it.
I would think every so often being able to get off the ship, and I mean it's only 3 months, and they got to explore a lot in between. It probably isn't enough to go full cabin fever, but I don't know how long.
That's why there's scenes of them wrestling.
Yeah, that was them duking out the cabin fever. It's over. It's done.
And showering.
Yeah, whoa.
Different times.
Okay, so they reach their first planet. This is the 4th day, so they're now out of food. They reach their first planet. They land, and the first thing they see is basically this dragon turtle-like creature flying by, which they call Turgans.
A turducken.
Yeah.
Not called turduckens. That's not it. I did. And so they decide to split up into 3 groups, one to hunt, one to forage, and one to find water. And the group we stay with, they're basically exploring all the weird different flora. And there's a tree trampoline.
I kept waiting for that thing to open up and turn into like a Venus flytrap scenario.
So was I!
Obviously the plants are in control of this planet.
Well, and also there, like you said, you're still wondering about the tone of this anime. Like, okay, is this where the horror starts? Is this where the tension really gets? And they're like, I'm bouncing on a tree. And I'm like,
yeah, I was getting so upset.
Oh, God, here's a bunch of bugs. I'm like, oh, and they're like, oh, they're crawling on me. They're awesome.
Yeah, they're like rolling around in the bugs.
And then I was like, okay, it's first planet. Maybe it's just first planet's easy. Maybe. They find branches in the shape of swords and spears, which is a bit odd. And I don't mean like kind of in the shape of swords and spears. Like they have handles and everything.
Yeah.
And then they find some parachute plants that literally shoot up seeds and then have parachutes attached to them that come down.
When she reached her hand underneath into like this, it almost seemed like a prison, and there was a fruit hanging in the middle. and Quittery reaches her hand in there, and I'm like, oh man, this is where it's gonna like constrict the prison and grab her by the hand and start to dissolve it or something, right? And then nope, she's just gonna go for a little
I will
umbrella
say,
slide.
having to come up with like 6 or 7 planets of flora and fauna to showcase, I thought their creative team did a pretty good job. Like a lot of this stuff, like it made sense. Like this whole parachute idea was, is definitely a play on what we have here on Earth. But it's like, I thought that was a decent. Not only did it serve the story, as we'll find out, but it was a decent design, I thought.
No, I agree with that. Yeah.
I did really like the ecosystems they presented, and like they kind of explained, like, oh yeah, on this planet, this is just kind of how things work. Things fly, so the plants have adapted to kill things in the air and stuff like that. But this was my least favorite planet because it felt the most silly with a trampoline tree.
Yeah.
And the Luca lamps.
Yeah, the Luca lamps. Yep. On their way back to the ship, the what they call the death orb, the thing they travel through that sent them into space, appears again and starts chasing them. And this is where we find out Ares has a photographic memory, and she leads them back to the ship. And then on their way to the ship, it disappears and stops chasing them. And so that's part of the mystery, is that, hey, this thing is coming back. And then we kind of deal with both Kitri and Funi. Funi has a little dog puppet that says horribly rude things all the time.
I love that puppet.
But we learned their backstory of, like, basically Kitri's mom never had time to raise her. She was raised by her servants. And then they adopted Funi when her parents apparently died. And then we're like, Kitri, you take care of her. And Kitri's like, what? Like, you never took care of me, and now I have to take care of something. I'm not going to take care of anything. So they don't have a good relationship, and they get in a fight, and Funi runs away. But this is a good time to talk about these characters. So Kitri, our resident Valley Girl, I want to know what Jason thinks of the Valley Girl, but I'm going to make him wait to be the... So, Jeremy, you go first. What did you think of Kitri?
She was a whiny baby, and entitled at the beginning. I thought she probably had one of the better arcs of the characters, but at the same time, like, it was one of those jagged arcs, I guess you could say, where it didn't seem like she was always making progress toward her goal or destination at the end of what her character was supposed to be. It was like she would head that direction, seems like she's learning something, and then, oh no, lapse into her original behavior.
It's called realistic.
Is that how that works?
Yeah, we humans suck.
Okay. I guess that makes her the best character then, because she's the most realistic.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah. Jason, what do you think?
Jason, what do you think?
Like I said, the first 10 minutes I texted you guys and I was like, I want to choke her. But she, I would agree exactly with what Jeremy just said. Her arc was pretty decent for a non-main character, right? Like she's part of the main cast, but I wouldn't say that she's the main character. And for her to have such a fleshed out arc, especially with the lessons that she learned that didn't seem to apply to too many other people, I thought she was decent by the end. I actually was rooting for her and her and Zach later on, but also her just personally.
I did find it interesting how much, like, at the end when they were showing them at a later stage in life, how much she looked like her mother. That was actually really, really cool to me that they went there. The haircut and everything, like, she looked just like her.
Right. I thought it was really interesting that what they present as the stuck-up rich Valley Girl, no assets to the team, is one of the most important members of the team. She's the doctor of the group. Her mom's a doctor, and she has done medical training, I'm assuming.
To some degree, from what it seemed like. So, like, she didn't feel like she was competent.
Right. But
she didn't feel like she was
competent. She serves the role of the doctor on the ship, which is, if you've seen Star Trek, that's like the third guy in the cast.
Yeah.
I'm a doctor, not a janitor.
And and I don't know how it was in the sub, but in the English dub, she like in the first episode, it's full on clueless Valley Girl. Oh my
Oh my
god.
god.
And
Oh,
the
no.
the voice actress drops it as her character arc goes on, which I thought was awesome. Like she gets
Yes.
rid of that whatever is causing that, and just starts talking normally. So by the end, she's just a normal, talks normal, doesn't put on airs. So yeah, she again a character who I can't stand you, and neither can anyone else in the cast, and then we grow to like her together. I do understand what you're talking about, Jeremy. How she had she's definitely the first to cry and whine about situation. Definitely the one who's like, I just want to get back into my warm bed, and while the others are trying to tough it out and be like, okay, well, that's not the situation, so deal with it.
Which is actually, I mean, I'm glad that element was there because, those people are real. So
And
somebody
then,
had to be like that in the cast.
Right. And then, guys, thoughts on Funi?
She was just kind of there. She definitely served a story purpose, but she wasn't as irritating as Ares as far as like personality. But she didn't get a ton of screen time. She was more of a plot device. So I don't have a lot of feelings. I mean, having Triumph the comic dog on her hand was kind of funny, but well, the question is like, because she obviously wasn't doing ventriloquism with him. Does he just know how to? Is it a puppet that can read her thoughts?
Yeah,
that's what they said in the first episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It reads your brain waves and interprets it into speech. So even if she's not thinking those exact words, it'll take her emotions and put it into a rude comment.
Yeah. And I love how he's from an anime in the show.
Yeah.
That was pretty self-aware of the anime.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
But yeah, she was all right.
Nice
yeah,
to
that
know
was probably
anime survives into the future.
Yes, that's probably the main reason why I really enjoyed her character was because you had this surface layer of who she was based on what she behaves like and looks like and everything, but then you have this opportunity to get a glimpse of what she's thinking, and it doesn't at all match. There's moments where they're like, "Oh my God, it's so creepy. She sounds so old," and they're absolutely right. So again, the writer is pointing out that these are intentional decisions that he's made to have these characters, kind of have these two different contrasting elements, and he's like that. I really liked her. Otherwise, yeah, she was just another character that happened to be on the trip.
All right. Poor Funi ends up on. They find her on one of those trampoline trees after she ran away, and they went looking for her. And it turns out that at sunset, these trees, to get sunlight, extend super high up out of the forest, and poor Funi's on top of them. So they all run up onto this cliff to go find her. Now, Kanata had run away to go kill the dragon, basically, because Kitri had challenged him, and he's a man.
Gonna bring that food home.
But he comes running in at this point and he jumps off the cliff and starts like running and jumping from tree to tree. And this is where Zach points out, like, oh, that's not just some guy. That is the best student athlete in the world. He's a decathlete, and he's apparently very. And it's hard to tell, like, how famous he is because they're all in the same high school, but he's definitely the number one athlete in their school. Because like Zach names him, and everyone's like, oh, that's him. Which happens a lot in this anime. Which again, this is where I was like, okay, we have a genius, we have a doctor, we have a decathlete. Okay, this is not just 6 or 7 random kids in space. This is something.
Yeah, because they're trying to. Are they trying to tie each other together as far as commonality at this point yet?
No.
No, not really. I think by the beach episode, he starts wondering, like, what's our common thread? Why is this happening to us, this group?
But at this point, I think that they have come to the conclusion that somebody in their group. No, not yet.
Okay. Yeah, that's actually the end of this episode.
Oh, okay. That's close.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that bugged me about this scene, however, is that okay, there's javelin throwing in decathlon stuff, but like it's I think that's a little different than aiming for a vital organ.
Distance throw versus precision throw. Yeah.
Right.
And especially because like the dragon thing's carrying Funi, so like don't miss.
Yeah, I'm like, are you gonna hit her?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, at that point, it's like I either send this thing crashing or she goes away to be eaten. She's not surviving if I don't throw.
Yeah.
Because I thought about that. I'm like, that seems dangerous. He could just. What if so a dragon comes, grabs Funi, he picks up the Luca lance that was left on the trampoline he's standing on, throws it, kills the dragon. And my thought was, what if he just drops her? They're still really high up.
Yeah.
But he drops her onto the trampoline, luckily. But then, like I said, gonna die no matter what. Might as well take the shot.
And also my question is, like, it looked like it hit it in the back left thigh. I was like, how is that a kill shot?
You don't know it's biology.
It's the Luca lance.
Fair enough. It is the Luca lance. Fair enough.
And then they fall off of the trampoline, and Kitri sends one of those seed umbrellas up, and they catch it, and they're able to come down safely.
Because this was a moment for Kitri where she was like, I need to do something to help.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they were up on the cliff, and she had run down underneath them to get involved, instead of just waiting for help. Whereas everyone else is like, oh, that guy's going to save her. That's cool. And so not only now do they get to eat a ton of meat, they get food. They also make is that the next episode? Eventually they make it's in this one. They make a edibility tester. Zach creates something that poke it into something, it'll tell you if it's yummy or not. Which is basically like, we can't have them just eating random foods and not letting them die. We have to do something.
Right.
Well, and what it does is it tears out a ton of extra story they would have had to tell of them on each planet. Is this healthy? Is this something I can eat? Is this edible? Yeah. Like that like hand waved a ton of extra time.
The only thing that's curious, and I completely buy into the story that Zach is capable of inventing this kind of thing. They make it very clear how genius he is. But wouldn't a ship of this kind already have something like that? Wouldn't that?
There's the level of technology that they're dealing with. Like, I mean, their suits, things. In some ways, it almost reminds me of Mass Effect. Like, maybe it's a little bit below it, but it's pretty close. And I mean, I was looking for, like, what about fabricators? What about, like, if you can turn anything in space into fuel for your faster than light engine, what can you do, like, with filtering water and reusing water? Like, you guys, once you fill that ship one time, you should be able to keep that going for the entire trip. You shouldn't need to refill. Filtration systems should be so good.
Gross,
and I mean,
gross.
Well, with what Japan did with recycling burgers, I'm sure that in a Mass Effect era, they could recycle more than just water.
So
I don't know.
You made it gross. Okay.
Yeah.
And then at the end of this episode, where there would, I think it's either after the credits or there is no credits on this one. Zach basically pulls Kanata aside and says, "Hey, remember how the radio's busted? That was done recently, like by someone on the ship right now." You could tell the wires are freshly cut. So
that's right.
This is where it's revealed one of them is a traitor. One of them is trying to get this group killed.
Yeah, and that the sphere was an assassination attempt, not a challenge of some kind.
Which all of a sudden, now the ship makes sense because maybe it's there for the assassin. The assassin never intended to die, but everybody else survived.
Yeah, I did think about that halfway through this as well.
Kanata worries about who it could be. His top suspect would be Olgar, who's always being secretive, and he has a secret briefcase that he found he won't tell anyone about.
It's like the obvious guy.
Yeah. Then they reach the next planet.
I thought it was Yuha, actually, for the longest time.
I did too.
Yeah.
I mean, she's already apologizing for everything. Like, why? Are you a killer? Did you just try to kill everybody? Is that why you're sorry?
I had 3 suspects, and Olgar was not one of them.
No, it wasn't for me either.
He's too much of a red herring. Like the guy that looks like he wants to kill everyone clearly is not the guy trying to kill everyone. That is not how you play it. I hate all of you and I hope you die. I'm not the assassin.
Yeah. That's right. He even calls that out at one point.
They reach the next planet and everyone's talking, and they talk actually to Funi, who talks about when she was adopted, and she overheard people talking about her adoption, and they were saying she was going to be sent on this camping trip, and that everyone would be
illuminated.
And Kanata's like, ah, crap, you mean eliminated. So yeah, we're definitely being murdered here. And then they reveal that to the group, like, okay, so someone's trying to kill us. And Olgar's like, well, my dad's the vice principal of the school we all go to, and that sounds like something he would do. And then they tell everyone about the communicator. So they all start freaking out and like, is it you? Is it you? And then right then, meteors hit the ship and punch holes in it, little tiny holes, and they lose their gravity. Water's flying, spraying, and they're losing air. Luckily, this is one of those moments where I'm watching like Jeremy's gonna have a problem with this. Luca pulls out his craft glue gun. So Luca's special skill is arts and crafts, and he uses his glue gun to patch up the space hole. Jeremy, how you doing?
This was, I mean, like, I get it. I've seen like in various games and stuff, they've got like these epoxy guns that are interesting and they're fine. That's cool. I don't know. This whole scene just seemed so, everything worked too well.
It was very contrived.
Yes, it was very contrived. Thank you.
Yeah, the DIY hot glue gun was.
Well, I especially loved how it was a projectile glue gun too. Like it wasn't just a glue gun that you would put up to the wall and then squirt the epoxy into the spot. It was like, yeah, from across the room you can aim and shoot this thing with good velocity.
In anti-gravity, that might.
You'd have to impart the velocity necessary, and then if it's a high viscosity gel coming out, it's not coming out with velocity. It didn't look like it was coming out with velocity.
Jeremy.
We used it the first time.
You've never used a glue gun in space.
Maybe it had 2 settings.
Future glue guns where we shoot people with it.
That's right. But they can't filter their defecations. I don't understand.
Okay, so a lot of stuff starts going wrong at first. They do patch up this one hole, but they're like, okay, there's obviously more problems because we don't have gravity, we don't have control of the ship, and there's still water flying around in this low gravity. So the ship starts getting pulled on into the planet, and they have 9 minutes before they crash.
This was like, the stakes aren't high enough. Just keep raising the stakes. Here you go.
Which is interesting. So yeah, so this is the biggest threat they've faced since they got kicked out into space, and not for a second did I believe that there would be any crashing. And this is actually the episode where I started thinking about Made in Abyss, and I was like, there was 2 characters in Made in Abyss. I knew that they would survive till the end of the series, and yet I felt they were in absolute danger every second of that anime. And yet here's a large crew that they could literally have room to get rid of some red shirts, and I didn't feel like anyone was ever in danger.
Well, like, this scene in particular, I wasn't too concerned about that, because it's like, if they crash, well, show's over, right? And roll credits, right? It's like, no one's surviving a crash from space.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's kind of my point about Made in Abyss, is that I know, because you need to keep having more episodes, this is not the end. No one's going to die here. I knew that every episode of Made in Abyss, you have to keep your 2 main characters alive, at least for now. And yet, there's so many times where I'm like, I don't know how they get out of this. They're for sure dead. Some
sometimes there's things worse than death, right? Sometimes there's pain and
that
there's
too.
terrible experiences, and they captured that and made an Abyss so well. And yeah, but they
this
didn't do
wasn't
that
a
here.
Thriller. I mean, it was a comedy, so
Yeah.
It's no, Jason. I disagree. Partially because it is both, and it
is both.
It even says out
It
loud
does.
in the anime
Yes.
that it's both. This is a sci-fi thriller and a slapstick comedy at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the most unbelievable thing about this entire scenario is how Yunha almost drowns.
Oh, I like that. That was actually the one thing I liked.
No, I like that. That made sense. Like, you're in space, there's no gravity. If you get water in your mouth, how are you going to cough it out?
No, swallow it.
Well, Yunha's not good at anything. Not that either.
Well, and I liked how they had to use a rag to absorb it and pull it out. They're like, I was down with that.
Is that a thing?
I think so. I think I've heard of that before.
Is water dangerous in zero gravity if it gets in your mouth and you're and you're breathing in? Maybe.
Heard that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I can't say for sure, but
it seemed feasible enough for me to believe that was like a real threat, and I like that it was. I just like that it was just this random thing that, like, hey, in zero gravity, things are different. A drop of water is dangerous, and I was cool with that.
So is a hot glue gun, apparently.
Yeah.
Well, I think that the reason that I liked it was because this was Yunha's moment where she was like, I know I'm useless. I'm going to go do something useful. It was like, no, everything is conspiring against you, Yunha. You will not be useful yet. It was an interesting character moment for her.
and she gets yelled at for it by Kichi because she's like, we were all told to put our helmets on, and here you are floating around, and now you're dying because of it.
Well, and this is what made me think she was the traitor, because they were talking about how it would have had to have been someone that was willing to also die, and she obviously didn't care about her own life.
Either that or she's so inept.
Because I was like, she doesn't have her helmet on.
A lot of things happen in this segment. They have to work as a team to both patch the gravity generator into the backup generator on the back of the ship. They work together to do that. And then there's some random bird that's flying around, so the gravity generator won't turn on because it thinks there's a danger.
Like, what did it come from space through the hole that was punctured?
No, it had to be from the last
planet. Or did it come
planet.
from the planet? If it was on the planet, why did the gravity generator turn on when it was in there already?
It was already on. It never turned off.
Maybe it was landed.
So it wouldn't care that something was flying. That just doesn't make sense. It seems like an arbitrary rule.
So
that it
the
would
whole
turn
thing
on
is,
that way.
if something's floating, in the air, the gravity won't turn on, so it won't fall. So if the bird, when the gravity turns on, if the bird is sitting,
but
on
they're
a chair,
floating. But they're floating after they freeze the bird.
I
they're
think it's
floating.
The height. I think it has to do with the height.
Is that what it is? Okay,
I'm not sure this is
unclear.
important enough to argue over.
They shoot it with a hot glue gun.
You know what? This is the hot glue gun part that bugged me. Gravity generation rules.
I'll say that, and they do this a lot. I like how they set up Olgar as the shooter. He's a guy who can shoot.
The marksman.
Yeah, it's really dumb that he shoots a bird with a hot glue gun to save the day. But
fit this anime so well.
They do a good job of setting up Zack as a genius and he can invent these things. Kanata is an athlete and he can do these acts. Olgar is a sharpshooter; he can shoot these things. And instead of just being like, hey, Olgar is able to shoot this thing from a mile away, and we don't need to explain it. They take the time of working in each of the characters' abilities in, and I thought it worked.
It's like a security. I was getting a lot of Star Trek vibes with how the characters all had their own little niches that they belonged in, right? You got Spock, and then you've got Kirk, obviously, and then and then all of a sudden you've got Scotty and Bones and Worf just made it on the ship.
Not to throw fuel on the fire, but when the glue hits the bird just freezes in its place. So it's not like they were able to bring it down, but then all of a sudden the generator turned on.
It's true. That is true.
Yeah.
Well, wait, I want to comment on something Jeremy just said. This actually their special abilities each is what gave me the Danganronpa vibe, because Danganronpa you have the best basketball player, the best chess player, the best video game player, the best bowler, the best biker, and that's how you get into that school. Is you have to be the best of something to be able to go to this school. So each one of them is like, okay, what's your special thing? Oh, I'm the best psychic in the world, so that's why I'm here.
Thing in Ron universe, you want to be the second best at things because you don't really want to go to that school.
You did. And I mean, I don't want to spoil a thing in Rompo, but just so you know, it's pretty bad outside the school too.
Okay.
It's like a worldwide event, and the school's just the center of it. Okay. Yeah, and then Zach lands the ship. Let's talk about Zach, the genius high schooler pilot, but not an a-hole.
I really liked this character. He had a bunch of anime tropes, but they did it in a way where it was more believable, I guess, because he was the smartest of the group. He was the most engineer of the group. He could fly a ship, but at no point was he like, I should be in charge, or you guys should listen to me, or any sort of power trip like that. It was very much, this is what I'm good at. And why don't you guys see this? Like, he was like super logical. Like everything came down to a 1 or a 0 for him. But because of that, he ended up being fairly likable as well, because he wasn't so overly confident or haughty about his abilities.
And I interesting how a lot of these characters we discover that they don't necessarily have the best relationships with their parents. And so yeah, no, his dad was very, very similar, in the flashbacks that we get and everything, and how he sees the behaviors that we're kind of noting about him. He sees them in his dad, but his dad's got the more malicious, negative, entitled attitude, and also just overly proud, pompous. And so it's interesting to me because it's an opportunity where you see someone who's in a situation where they could have easily duplicated the negative qualities out of a reaction because of, I've suffered and I don't know how to do anything except make other people suffer the same way, or I need people's approval. But he really didn't care at all about the social sphere. And he also didn't, at the same time, he didn't view people as objects to inspect and look at from a distance the way his father did. So he did not carry out those traits, which I thought was a fantastic bit of writing, because it when it isn't necessarily often gone to with characters who come from very, very bad relationships.
Yeah, I absolutely love Zach because when I first saw him, like, okay, genius characters are usually like the hardest ones to win over. They usually assume they should be the leaders, and they're a trope in anime. And I was expecting that, and they kind of went a completely different way with it. He's the first one to see the value in Kanada's ways, and all the other characters. Like you said, he has value in all these other characters, and I just really liked him from the beginning. He was one of the only characters who wasn't like, this trope. It was like, man, you are really kind of fresh and different than what I expected, and that's really nice to see, especially in the beginning, and it carries through the whole way. And especially his ending, like the Zach's whole arc is really cool. He doesn't really go through the changes everyone else does because he's just kind of like, no, I get it. I get what this guy is trying to do to get us home, and I'm willing to work with that. And I completely see the value, even though I'm the genius. What he's bringing has more value right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they land. We also learned that guns don't exist anymore, except for Ogar found a gun. They say abolished, but they
abolished.
But police officers do have them. They do mention that.
Mm-hmm.
But officially they're abolished. But Olgar has found a gun, and that's the secret briefcase he was carrying. Then there's a thing where Zach walks in on Kitri bathing, and she's like, okay, well, if that's what you wanted, you could have just told me. And he's like, I just need to brush my teeth. And
But
I
it's
laughed.
funny because it's so casual. He's like, I don't
This
care at all.
I actually really it was this scene was refreshing because
It is.
you have a
Yeah.
walk-in scene in almost every one of these teen dramas, and it's the exact same scene over and over again. Girl gets embarrassed, guy gets embarrassed, girl throws something at guy has bloody nose plus whatever. It's the same. It's the same thing. Now this one's like no expression change from Zach at all,
Yeah.
and she's like not. She's embarrassed, but she obviously doesn't mind him being in there all that much, right?
She's now offended too.
Right, because he's like, I just need to brush my teeth, and she's like, wait, you don't want any of this? She
Yeah.
doesn't say that, but it's the attitude that comes across, and it was just it was nice to see that interaction instead of the normal trope.
The next planet, which is actually probably my favorite planet, is there's a ton of plants. They find these delicious candy flowers and they're eating them. They also realize there's moss everywhere and these giant poultries, and in the moss, underneath the poultries, are dead animal carcasses. And they're like, oh, that's really interesting. Shars, the guy who knows the most about plants and animals, is like, that's really interesting that's happening, that's how these plants and moss are growing, is off animal carcasses. And they don't really make much of it other than that. They take back the flowers and they immediately are spoiling. And they're like, okay, then we can't store these. And they're only able to gather about 3.5 days worth of food on this planet. And they also find birds they get to ride on. And
the birds that love so much, gruppies.
Big gruffies, yep. And so that they're worried about what to do because if they can't get enough food, they can't go on to the next planet. And then the journey's over. So Kanata makes the decision that they're going to have to lower the water and food rations. And Yunhao, who's been depressed and shy up to this point, decides to run away. So this is a good time to talk about her character because this is kind of her arc, her special episode, if you will.
Yes.
Jeremy, what did you think of her?
So for a long time, like Jason mentioned earlier, I was very suspicious too that Yunha was the bad guy because she was so off in a corner, in a dark corner, and she was always, hiding behind her bangs and everything. I thought maybe there was a more sinister reason for it. And I really didn't believe that her level of ineptness could be as high as it was being portrayed. She had to be doing this purposefully. But as we actually got to know her a little bit, she just became incredibly bland. And for me, like she had this moment where she's like, okay, I've realized who I am and I'm gonna, now express myself and be who I want to be and everything. And in that moment where she's singing, that's kind of about it. That's the peak for her. And then she just kind of dips back into the background again and disappears. And yeah, so I don't know. She was really probably the least interesting character for me of all of them.
I have a similar view. Like she didn't get a ton of screen time. I mean, sure, she was always there in the wide shots. But
that's why she ran away, Jason. She ran away because people said things like that.
It actually, I did find it humorous that her glasses were purely for show; they weren't prescription. But it's interesting because this is yet another flashback of another character that has had parent issues, and that seems to be a common thread so far. Is that anyone's backstory we get a hold of, except for Ares, the relationship between the parent and the child is like really rocky or uncaring or like loveless almost, kind of a transactional type of relationship. And Yunha's is probably one of the worst because mom doesn't want her to not aspire to anything, but you are useless. You need to stay in the background. Don't bring attention to yourself. And actually, this is where I really started to gain a fondness for Kanata because he helps bring her out of that. his go get 'em attitude and his positivity and feelings. This is one of those first like emotion solve the day actually really works because we're working with an emotional issue instead of I need more power, I'll feel my way to more power kind of thing. So I actually enjoyed this arc for her, but yeah, she's not particularly a huge character in this cast.
Quit calling her big, man.
I said
body
not
shame her.
huge. What's wrong with you?
She's definitely not like an important character or really stand out. Those have been fun to animate, but I found her backstory and Luca's really interesting because when they're both presented, and this when we find out like she basically had an abusive mom who's like, "Hey, you can't do anything," and she's like, "Hey, mom, I got in a play. Like, you drop out of that play right now. You suck so bad, you can't be in a play." But also with Lucas that we'll talk about in a little bit. When the backstory is presented to me, I basically eye rolling like anime is gonna anime. What are you gonna do? And then to find out these backstories are actually super important clues to the bigger mystery, I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
There's a really important reason her mom is the way she is to her and messed her up so bad. That's a big part of the mystery. It's not just, hey, we need to have a character who had an abusive mom. It's part of everything, and that made it okay. Even though, yes, it's 100% a trope, 100% been done 100 times in animes, this time there was an important reason for it, and so I really liked it. The character herself she's fine. You knew this episode was coming. You knew as soon as there was a shy girl who didn't believe in herself, she was going to get a special episode where she would. And I'm like, let's get to why. So Kanata basically goes and talks to her, and she's like, "Well, the one thing I've always wanted to do is sing." He's like, "Well, then sing, darn it! You be a singer." Meanwhile, everyone else gets poisoned by spores from the poultries. The way this planet works,
timing is perfect.
the plants are the dominant species of this planet, and they trick animals into coming, and then they poison them. They get everyone back onto the ship, and Kitri and Yunha are trying to take care of them while Kanata goes out for what they realize are antidote mushrooms that also grow around the trees. That way they don't kill all the animals. Basically, these trees release poison, release antidote. Anyone who eats the antidote lives, and anyone who dies, they eat. So he goes to the tree. He has to expose himself to the poison, which I thought was a huge, wild guess.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
But yeah, he exposes himself to the poison so that the antidote, and then he eats like 10 of them. Like he probably only needed one.
Right, because one cured that huge animal.
Right,
yeah, exactly.
And then he ate like 10, and I'm like, well, how many did it give you if it's a limited resource thing?
Yeah, because we only saw it give him 10.
Right.
He ate them all.
But just so you know, everything works out fine. He gets back to school.
Of course.
But in the meantime, Jung Hao sings to all the sick people.
Okay, this is so dumb.
And they all thank her and are like, we literally would have died without your singing.
It's so not true. It's so not true.
So the only reason I kind of give it a pass is that if you think about people in, say, the cancer ward or whatever, if they're terminally sick people, some people really are soothed by stuff like that. And that's, I could buy that. You're in a lot of pain. There's no access to pain medication. You feel like you're on your last limbs, and here comes a really nice melody to, soothe you mentally. I buy it.
I could buy it as soothing them enough for them to like actually say, I let go now. I die.
But my only complaint, I don't have Jeremy's issue with it, but my issue with it is that this whole character's thing is I'm worthless. Here's my special skill. Man, that is really not helpful in a survival situation.
No,
it's not. And I kind of felt bad for her, like, you're still mostly useless. I'm sorry.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yes.
Okay.
But she does do well in manual labor moving forward, so.
She's big.
They find
She's
out
tall.
They find out they can eat the poultries themselves, so they're able to
get their revenge.
Yeah, they're able to get their revenge. They say goodbye to their bird rides, and they leave. Yunhao cuts her hair. They go back to space, and then we actually jump back to home where the parents are meeting to discuss declaring the children legally dead, but based on how much time has passed, no one's been able to find their bodies, and we see it from Emma Spring, Ares' mother's point of view, and she's basically like, "That's insane. Let's keep looking," and all the other parents are like, "Yeah, but should we?"
It's been
Well,
a
the government
month.
did declare that they're not going to help them anymore.
Right. The search has ended, and
But all these people are incredibly wealthy.
yes, and they're all very. Look, we know this is hard, but we should. Like Ares' mom is the only one who has a problem with what's going on. Everyone else is kind of like, "That's life.
Yeah.
Kids die.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?"
They're brutally callous.
They are, which to me was a clue. What I thought was a clue. Like,
Oh, yeah.
okay, everyone's parents is the same except for hers. I wonder who the assassin is.
Yeah. She came from a good family. It must be her.
Yeah. Honestly,
Yeah.
like obviously that her mom's not involved in whatever's going on, and
Yeah.
if the other parents are, then why is Ares involved? Maybe because they
Yeah.
hired her as the assassin, and she didn't realize her daughter was. Okay, in retrospect, I was way off. I took my guess.
The moment they talked about a politician within the group of parents that wasn't able to make it to that meeting, I was like, oh, it was a hit job by the government or whatever.
There is something that's mentioned is that a new law has passed about DNA and those kind of issues recently on the planet. That's a big clue for everybody, which kind of got past me, to be honest. All right, then we go. What's
Might
that?
have been the killer. Just
Your
so you know,
robot
I
voice
actually got
again.
Ares. Might have. Oh my god, are you serious?
Say it one more time.
Okay. Just so you know, I also thought that Ares might be the killer for several. There were several moments where I was like, "Is it Ares? Oh man, that'd be a great twist. That'd be such a good twist. They need to do that." It was those moments where she had just a little bit too much introspection, a little bit too much intuition. It's like that's an assassin's intuition right there.
When she's like, "Hey, let's all stop fighting and just not talk about this," I was like,
Yeah.
well, that's
Yeah.
curious."
Exactly.
So then we go to an ocean planet so we can have a beach episode. Anime gonna anime, you guys.
Yeah, I mean, we got the obligatory shower scene, and now we get the obligatory beach scene.
I just have to say, it was a great beach episode, by the way.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I mean, it even had the like, let's have the girls look at each other's swimsuits and judge boob size, and because that's what you do when you're an anime girl at the beach, you have to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Do real girls have that conversation? I should ask
have
one.
no idea.
We are
Bakas.
fight the patriarchy. Okay. Okay. What happens on this planet? So what? There is something interesting about this planet. I don't think it ties into the plot, but everything on this planet reproduces asexually.
That's right.
Which is interesting given twists that are coming up.
Yeah.
But I don't think it relates to anything in the actual plot.
No.
But yeah, everything there,
It's just
everything on this
concept
planet,
segregate.
right? It's just kind of it's kind of ironic, and also this is where the romance triangles really start blossoming. Specifically, Ares and Kanata. Kitri is like, "Hey, I noticed you like him. You need to do something about it. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge." And Ares goes up to him and asks him if he has a girlfriend. And I literally wrote down for my notes,
This is great.
He is dumb. Because his answer is, everyone's my girlfriend. I love everyone.
I cracked up so hard at the way that they drew his face and how every response he gave just got dumber and dumber. It was really good. But he keeps it up later on in other encounters with her. And so it becomes obvious that, no, this is his defense mechanism.
I wonder if he's turning on a defense mechanism because he feels he can't do stuff like that in a captain position.
Mm-hmm. I think that's exactly right. Like his responsibility is getting everybody home safe. He doesn't have time to play around.
And then Olgar.
So he's no Captain Kirk then.
Olgar
Yeah,
and
you're
Luca
right.
go fishing. So let's talk about Olgar. What do you guys think of him?
I like his character a lot. He comes off as unimportant in the beginning, like, nobody likes me.
I'm a jerk to everyone.
Yeah, but
Yep.
this episode on made him like his arc didn't start until this episode, unfortunately. But it hit you like a truck. And it's like there's so much empathy for this character in such a short period of time. And kind of shows you why he's the way he is, shows his redeeming qualities and why, he belongs in this group, and that, even though he says, I don't have friends, he obviously cares. But yeah, I actually really like this character.
Yeah, I totally agree. He to me seemed like a band, like a rubber band or something else like that, some elastic thing that's stretched to the point where it's about to break and it's just sustaining that, right? I don't know, I see things in images sometimes, but he's just sustaining that state because he's so tense and he's so tight, and it's being portrayed with him not caring about anybody. But in reality, there's this moment where he just loses it and he goes completely impulsive. And it happens at the end of this episode. And we get to see, right afterwards, the rubber band broke, right? And so, I mean, I don't want to get right into it, but I think that the arc that he goes into, it shows him breaking under the pressure of his own internal stresses and then kind of dealing with them in the only way that he knows how, and that not working out, and then trying to figure out how to survive from there on in the social dynamic. And so, yeah, he's really interesting. It's a good character.
I actually found him a little too tropey, kind of like Young How. When we meet him, I'm like, okay, here's the jerk guy who's gonna become a friend by the end. It's coming, and it does. Also, I will say his English dub actor sounds like he smokes like 40 packs a day. I'm glad we're out here in space, and also my brother died.
Oh my god.
He's so deep and raspy, and he's supposed to be like this young 16-year-old guy. It was a little bit rough for me. That's really the only voice I had trouble with.
And back in Nam, we had to travel.
I did enjoy his arc. It was a good arc, and I did like how he learned to respect Kanata's and his cheesy ways, which are like his complete opposite. So I do like the character, but I did find him a little bit tropey and a little bit predictable what was going to happen with him. I just liked I especially like how at the end he was like really important in the flash forward, basically.
Yeah,
the way he's living his life. I'm like, oh, that's a really satisfying conclusion to your arc.
Yeah,
I'd agree.
Him and Luca go fishing, and Luca's like, "Hey, let's be best friends. You and me. I'm the arts and crafts guy. You're the jerk. We'll be best friends." And he's like, "No, I'm not friends with anyone." And they're talking, and Luca reveals his last name, and Olgar's like, "Wait, your dad's the senator." He's like, "Hold on, I'll be right back." And he leaves, and then everyone
stay right there.
Everyone goes and has a picnic, and then Olgar comes out and takes the gun he has and puts it to Luca's head, and then this is supposed to make you think, okay, the assassin has revealed himself, which obviously is not what the case here. Olgar reveals like, hey, my brother was investigating the senator, and then my brother was committed suicide, but was clearly murdered to cover up something, and I blame your father. So now I'm just going to murder you to get rid of it because you're clearly his heir. And Luca's like, I'm not his heir because what you don't know is I got boobs. And so Luca reveals that he is a hermaphrodite. He actually says, I have both parts plus some, which is really interesting. But again, when we find out the reason, I was like, that's 100% a great clue and really cool. I'm down with it. But yeah.
At the time, it was like, wait, what?
I was like, anime. You gotta anime. Yeah, Luca literally takes off his top and shows off his breast to everyone to prove my dad doesn't like me because I'm different.
I'm very unusual.
But he says he's intersex, but he identifies as a boy, so that's what he presents himself as.
So now is a good time to talk about the character Luca. What do you guys think of him?
He has these it's so funny because he's almost a background character, but then he's got these really important moments like spread out throughout the anime, to where he's got a decent front row showing. I liked him. He was the joke cracker. He was he was like Ares, where he wanted to be everybody's friend. He specifically was targeting Olgar and wanting to be his best friend. And he was always there to help. He didn't really have a special talent like everyone else did.
He was their artist.
And he fashioned like all the weapons as well.
He's the arts and crafts guy and can literally build anything. If it's Zach does all the tech.
Scotty. Yeah,
that's right. Like the bow and arrow and the Luca lance. Yeah, so that's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I liked his interaction with the group as well. I thought he fit in decently.
I really liked Luca. It was kind of a Dororo situation where I suspected Luca was a girl from the beginning. As a matter of fact, I remember in episode 1, I was thinking, wait a minute, what do you mean there's only like 3 girls? There's 4 girls. What are you talking about? And so this wasn't a huge surprise, except for the hermaphrodite part. I didn't see that coming. But yeah, no, Luca was very interesting. Initially, when this happened, I was like, okay, anime, like, whoever's going to write the story, you're going to do whatever you want. That's fine. I don't care. But like, you got to make this make sense. Like that, this just happens to be. Let this be something that has something to do with the story. And they did. They held true with that. They actually came through in the end. And I was like, oh man, this makes perfect sense. This was a great direction to go. Great idea. This is good. But yeah, Luca was pretty entertaining. I liked the fact that he was willing to just kind of, let Olgar take his life, get his revenge that way, and that was his solution. Is like, well, you know what? I don't care. I'm done. He was very self-sacrificing.
I did love when Kanata went to him and was like, "We got to change the sign again."
Yeah. Just like Jeremy, I've seen enough anime now that if I see an effeminate boy in an uneven mix of boys and girls, I'm like, you're hiding your true gender. And actually, especially in this episode where they're shipping everyone very obviously, like, okay, here's the couple, that you go off and be friends, and I'm like, this is ship. And then they kind of flip that by being like, well, no, he's both plus more, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess you did catch me off guard.
But they still do weird things, like in the later part when they're adults. He's like, oh yeah, I was asleep over at Olgar's.
Yeah, well,
and you're just like, I don't know. Does he still identify as?
We'll talk about when we get there. I have thoughts on Olgar in that ending. I need to bring up. But I found his teasing very funny. Like he was always the character to be needling the other characters. Like, I see what you did there. Especially now, Olgar. Hey, thanks for making me strip in front of everyone. That was really cool of you, dude.
Yeah, it's like walking up and like starting to, oh no, my shirt's open. Freaking him out again, over and over again.
Yeah, basically, Luca though says, you'd be doing my dad a favor if you murdered me here and now. So, do what you need to do, but just know that you're not hurting him.
And so Olgar decides not to do it, and a tsunami then suddenly hits. Now, they did set this up, because I was like, a tsunami randomly? But they did set up, like, they're sitting there, and an earthquake happens. And they're like, whoa, that's weird, there's an earthquake. And in the ocean, when there's an earthquake, there's a wave. And so I was like, okay. I was wondering what's going to be the danger here, because it's weird there's no female, or no males. I'm like, it's definitely not a paradise. There's something wrong here. But ocean-like planet that just sometimes is fully an ocean planet. Makes sense.
Yep.
Everyone gets back onto the ship in time except for Olgar and Luca, because this is their special episode.
How dare you?
And Luca grabs a tree branch and then grabs onto Olgar, and Olgar is like, I'm not gonna let anyone die because of me, and he slips away. And I was like, oh, okay, this anime is got some cojones. It's gonna kill Olgar, and then Kanata jumps out of the sky, tied to a rope, and saves him. And then he starts slipping again. He's like, "Nope, I'm not gonna let anyone go down for me. I'm just gonna slip." And Kanata's like, "No, I've been training for this." And he pulls him up. He's like, "You don't get to die." So Olgar lives, which I am okay with, and I think too many times we walk away from anime where I'm like, I wish somebody had died. I don't actually wish anyone had died. I do wish I had felt like someone had died, and other than this moment, that didn't really happen.
I'm in the exact same boat. I was like, I rooted for every single character to survive, but then I was also like, it kind of feels like someone should have died.
Yeah, just to show the stakes. This is what I meant by like he went slack after that impulsive moment of pulling the gun and everything, and like that's what happens when he suddenly loses control. But then after that breaks and there's no satisfaction, he's just like, oh crap, I'm just done. I'm not fighting this anymore. Yeah.
They let Olgar keep the gun. They're like, you're obviously the best man with it, and I trust you. Which is Kanada's thing is literally like, yeah, even if you screw us over, we literally can't survive without each other. There's no choice but trust, 100% absolute. So if I can't trust you with the gun, we're gonna die anyway. So you keep the gun.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he like you said, he makes the point that Luke or the Olgar's obviously the best marksman. It really doesn't belong in anyone else's hands, because we find out that he's been practicing with a target pistol for a long time since his brother died. Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
They head out toward the next planet. We get a scene where poor Ares cuts her finger while cooking, and Charse helps her. And Kitri points out, like, man, Charse is always super nice to you. And then Ares is like, hey guys, I've been thinking, I have a photographic memory, and me and Charse were supposed to be in the same class, and I've never seen him before. And the episode, from this moment on, this is like the first really biggest cliffhanger, and I was like, oh, what's going on?
And the way they draw Charse's eyes, you're just like, he knows.
Yeah,
it's him. It's him.
Like narrow. Which on episode 6, I'm like, okay, that's clearly can't be right.
Yeah, exactly.
And they
threw me off too.
They talked to him about it. He's like, yeah, I'm actually a transfer student, and I transferred late, and I'm actually a member of the royal family. I know on our planet we have no governments, but there is one place that gets to pretend they're kings of their own land, and I'm from there. And he tells this backstory of he had a friend who was a commoner. He brought her into the section with the nobles, and she accidentally got pushed off a wall, and she went into a coma. And so he's run away now because of what happened to his friend. And Ares reminds him of his friend. And everyone's like, that's the saddest story ever. We totally believe you. That's awesome. And so he's forgiven. And they go to the next planet. And this is the planet where the sun always shines on one side. And like it's too hot on one side and too cold on the other side. But there's a safe middle zone we can go to. They go there. And this is the planet where everything is flying, so the plants have learned to attack things in the air. And their ship gets attacked, and they actually get grabbed by, like, it looks like a giant tree hand. Just, like, comes out of the ground and grabs them.
The muscle plant.
Right.
Yes.
And nearly envelops their entire ship.
It's like a...
Yeah.
Rip.
Yeah. This planet bugged the heck out of me. Because in all research and all sci-fi that I've ever done or read about planets that are in a lock like that, orbitally locked, that band between the cold and the hot is a turbulent storm front. like it's full of tornadoes, and the air is moving so fast that you cannot survive. Nothing can survive in there. So when they come in here and it's just like smooth and placid, and they're just kind of flying around, I'm like, no, that's not right. No,
that makes sense. Yeah, because it's in a constant flux of trying to equalize the pressure.
Yep. Atmosphere and lower atmosphere switching super fast.
Which actually probably would have fit for the story too. That would be the reason they crashed, but instead of muscle trees.
Yeah, exactly.
So Zach does a spin move, like he does do a barrel roll, and that.
They do a barrel roll, and they get away, but they do end up crashing, and they actually lose ship controls, and a lot of damage to the ship. And Zach basically tells them, guys, we can fly, but we can't go back into space, and we can't use fast and light travel. We are stuck here now, and there's no way to fix it. So everyone kind of started immediately oh, it's over, and he's like, okay, nope, we're gonna keep going on. Nobody gives up. It was like, you literally just gave up.
Yeah.
And Keytree has a complete meltdown.
Oh my god, yeah.
Which actually is important to the plot, because Keytree freaks out, and Zach's like, there is one thing you could do. There's a cryogenic pod in the ship. We could freeze you, and the next thing you'll know, you'll be rescued. There's a chance it could be a year, 1,000 years, never happen, but you won't have to live your life out on this planet. And she's like, well, that sounds awful. He's like, well, yeah, I know, but I need to set this up because it's about to be relevant.
Yeah, I hated it for that
How
reason.
dare you?
It was the same thing as the ship's modular nature. I hated this entire arc because it was like, you didn't introduce these things, these concepts in episode 1, 2, or 3.
This is a conversation that probably should have happened a couple episodes ago, so it felt more natural.
Yeah, exactly.
Because basically, after everyone has their freak out and they're foraging, they find another ship.
And that's when I texted you, convenient extra ship is convenient.
Yes.
Do you want to have that argument?
Well, okay, I get the probability of it landing in this band, but it is a pretty big planet.
It is a very big planet. And this can't be the only part of the band where those plants exist.
I would say, based on my knowledge of Star Wars, that there's usually a best spot to land.
That's fair.
That's true.
That's
Is
fair.
it new Star Wars or old Star Wars? Because
Oh, jeez.
Prequel Star Wars only.
Yeah, do you have to come
okay.
out of hyperspace
Right, the middle
after
ground.
a shield?
yeah, or before it.
I think it's plausible enough that it didn't really bug me at all.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was funny that they actually took the time to explain it by showing us a diagram by cutting up fruit. I was like, you know this is unlikely, so you're actually trying to convince us with this dialogue.
I also thought, Jason, you meant that why would even a ship be on this planet? And I was like, well, there's clearly a reason why ships would be hitting this planet on a certain path.
No, that's fair. I just thought it was for them to be, we crashed our ship, and then walk 5 feet. Oh, hey, there's another one.
Have you not seen the Rick and Morty episode with the tiny planet where you could walk across it in 5 minutes?
Oh, I've
Maybe it's the same thing. It's just a tiny planet.
That is possible.
Yeah. So they find the ship and they go inside, and there's a cryogenic freezing pod that's been used. No one else is alive on the ship. And they wake her up, and it's a Russian astronaut whose ship had crash landed here. Her crew had left, and they never came back, so she froze herself. And her name is Paulina. Guys, thoughts on Paulina?
So the moment Luca reveals his true nature, as soon as they find that, oh, someone's frozen, I was like, female.
Yeah, because we have to get the balance for the anime.
Right, gotta get the balance back. I have mixed feelings about Paulina, but overall, I think she was a great addition to the story. She doesn't end up being super important to the crew, and there are chances for survival, but she provides a ton of situations where we can start discovering more about this world. We can start discovering more about what's going on and more about the plot and the twists and turns. And I thought it was well written that this would be what helps them unveil all this stuff.
Yeah, you could even say that she prods at their echo chamber a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's kind of cool. She doesn't even realize that she's doing it. One thing I really liked about Paulina is that when she woke up and everything afterwards, her behavior was very much that of, I could see it being a person that was sickly, that it came out of cryogenic sleep, and maybe everything didn't go great. Maybe it wasn't a pleasant experience. Maybe she's not really vital and ready to go when she comes out. She's going to take a long time to recover from that. And that was pretty cool. I kind of expected that it was going to be the anime trope of her coming out of there and just, being someone that would bring conflict into it or try to take on a leadership role or something else like that, but they didn't do that.
I actually thought she would, being an astronaut and coming aboard a ship full of children, being like, okay, clearly I need to be the one in charge. But she's like, yeah, whatever you guys want. I'm just really glad I'm not frozen anymore.
Just want to go home.
So apparently the computer tells them that she's been frozen for 12 years, right?
She asks the date, and they tell her.
Yep. Yeah. And so, they realize it's been 12 years. They take her back to their ship. They have conversations. There's a line dropped about, it's a sci-fi thriller. It's a gag anime. Who knows?
Not me.
That's Luca. And Kanata turns to him like, what'd you just say?
Yes.
Because they're discussing stuff. They realize they can their ship, like Jeremy mentioned, the ships are sectional, and her damaged parts are the parts that ours are working. Yeah, so they could just swap out and so they put on her part of the ship to their ship, and now they can fly.
My first question was, why didn't they grab their communication ship?
Oh, good point. Maybe that was damaged in the damaged section, and therefore it doesn't work.
Sure.
Okay.
Maybe the only way to remove it is to cut it out, which damages it in the process.
None of that was explained, but sure.
One thing is, Paulina asked when she asked what year it is, she's like, wait, did something happen? They're like, nothing happened. She's like, nothing happened? And then she's like, never mind. And she won't talk about it. But that ends up being important later. We get a conversation between Kitri and Zach where she's like, my real dream was to get married to you, you jerk. And he's like, well, yeah, isn't that what we're doing? She's like, wait, what? She's like, yeah, I always assumed we were getting married. Remember when we were 5 years old? You said, let's get married. I said, yes.
And then it does a flashback of them as children. Let's get married one day, okay? He's like, okay.
Yep. So they are now officially engaged from this moment on.
They go. Christ, Jason, what did you make us watch?
No, I love this. I love this scene because he's like, look at her. He's like, "What? I've always loved you."
No, yeah, you're right. It was a good scene.
It's the most deadpan. Like, and she's just like freaking out, and he's just like, "I don't understand why this is so confusing for you."
Yep.
There's a scene where they fight plant monsters to get Paulina's team's dog tags. And then they get back on the ship. And
I liked it until the dog tag got stuck on the tree, so Kanata's gotta go.
Kanata's got a Kanata.
What?
Kanata's
save it with his arm. Yep.
It's like, okay, I'm gonna use my triathlon skills to get it. And it's like, okay.
Okay, and then on the ship, Kitri realizes that Fumi and her have the same blood type because she was testing everyone's blood because she'd already done so for Paulina. And she points out that, and everyone's like, yeah, we all assumed she was your biological sister until you told us she was adopted. You guys literally look the same. And like, well, maybe your mom did have a secret kid. So they do a DNA test to find out. And Zach's like, they're not sisters. They're literally the same person. Which comes to our big reveal that, and Zach points this out, that guys, we're all clones. Our parents aren't our parents. They are our DNA donors, and we are spare bodies for them. And one thing we haven't mentioned is that Zach has mentioned a few times that his father was working with memory transplants and the science behind that. He's mentioned that a couple times, and that Kitri's mom was helping with part of that. So there's all some big conspiracy behind all these rich, powerful scientists and politicians to basically create clones of themselves and then swap memories and put themselves into younger bodies. And that's why the Young Hao's mom wouldn't let her sing, because then people might get suspicious why they sound exactly the same. and
it'd be harder for her to establish her own identity once she takes the body.
Right. And Kanata, his father was always training him to be an athlete because he wanted his body to be in tip-top shape when he took it back.
Yep.
So, and Funi is a second clone of their mom because she just wanted to have a spare just in case. She figured she was the doctor behind the work. She gets to have a bonus.
Specifically, Funi was spare parts.
Yes.
That one was intense. Like when they said that, I was like, okay, so this anime actually, like, it's silly and goofy and everything, but sometimes it'll be like, hey, here's a horror moment. Like this poor
Right.
little girl, she is spare parts.
So we actually then go back to the parents who are now having this conversation. They actually meet Luca's real DNA donor, and he's an artist who's like, yeah, I ordered a body with extra parts. That was what I wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to be the pinnacle of the
Right.
next human evolution or
So
whatever.
that was all by design. And the
Yep.
reason this has all happened is because the government has made that new law, and now if anyone ever finds out they did this, they're all going to be in massive trouble. So to get rid of the evidence, they tried to murder their children.
And they had to do it like in space where couldn't even discover it.
Right, because you can't have the body be found, so DNA tests can be ran.
But it's like it's the hospital person, it's the school person, it's the politician, like the people that are rich that are doing this, and so they had like all of the connections to be able to keep this secret, while educating the kids and fudging records and everything else. Yeah.
And the theory is that Ares had to have been adopted because her and her mom look nothing alike, and her mom has always been kind to her. She's the only one that doesn't fit everything else. It was at this part I realized I was 100% wrong on my guess. The parents, like I said, they argue about it, and the plan now is for the kids to go back home and expose their parents. And Kaneda talks to each person, see how they're doing. They're all kind of a little freaked out, but they're getting over it. And then Zach and Kitri announce their engagement, and this is one of the funniest scenes that made me laugh, is because every time they'd ask Zach about it, he's been like, I'd always love her. And they're like, oh my God, he's dropping bombs on us. They're all rolling on the floor like, he's so in love, we can't handle it.
Well, it's that we don't understand. We can't
Right,
read
there's no
his
emotion.
expression.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no emotion, but the things he's saying are so filled with, like, they're so loaded with emotion.
Right.
This is when Kitri was like, you can never complain about your dad's dead eyes ever again.
Yes, exactly.
And then they realize they're in range to pull up a image of their home, and so they bring it up and they call Paulina in, and she's like, oh my God, I can't believe that's Earth. That's not Earth. And they're like, what's Earth? We're from Astra.
Okay, I gotta admit, when she said we're from Astra, I was like, whoa, wait, what? Because
Yeah,
the
that was a
ship
good
was
twist.
named Astra. Yeah, and I was like, wait a minute, so the title isn't about the ship? The title's about the planet? It was, I don't know, I got shivers from it. It's silly, but I got shivers from it. It was good.
It is a good twist, but have you ever seen anyone name their ship the Earth?
Well, that's the thing, though, is the ship was named prior to them finding the planet or naming it. So
Right.
they named the planet over the idea that the ship was pioneering.
So
basically.
the ships were named, the planets were named after the ship, but then they named their ship after these kids named their ship. They saw
Oh
a
my
plaque
God,
that
you're
said
saying
the
the
Earth.
kids are, yes. Yes, the
They
kids
saw
did.
a plaque that
Yes.
said the Earth on their ship, and they said, okay, then we'll call the ship the Earth.
Oh God, that's great. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
All right. So then they have this big conversation with Paulina, and they realize that their histories don't line up. Basically, in Paulina's history on Earth, there was a giant asteroid coming that was going to destroy the Earth, and they decided they needed to get off the planet, and she was part of the exploratory missions to find another planet. On Astra, all the history is the same up until the Cuban Missile Crisis, which turned into World War III and wiped out a ton of the population. Right. I don't know if they reveal it's half here. We do find out later half the population does die in a war.
I'm pretty sure they mentioned that World War III murdered half the population.
And
And
then subverse.
So on Astra, and they've mentioned this before, there's no government, there's not a single language, there's one language, and guns have been abolished. That's been the big things about it.
And there's no religion.
Right, and there's no religion. Because, yeah, Paulina says something about God, and they're like, what's God? And she's
Yeah,
like, "You
this
guys
is like
don't
a really
have
big.
religion?"
Yeah, because you hear all kinds of different anime, and so playing on that when they say what kame.
Right, and so the plan was after the exploratory missions is that the Earth had wormhole technology, which is what the death orbs are, and they were going to use those to travel. And actually, the ice planet they were floating above when they popped out of space, that was Earth. This ship was this ship was a spare that was sitting above Earth, and that's why they found it. And so they've just been working their way back home from the original home.
Now visiting the idea of how likely that ship would be to be there, I think it depends on whether or not the wormhole is one of the original wormholes, or whether that wormhole was something manufactured at a later time.
Well, all the
I could
wormholes
see
are
it being
manufactured.
linked somewhere nearby. No, I mean manufactured since arriving at Earth
Oh,
versus
brand new
manufactured
stuff.
on Earth.
As far as likelihood, the one thing that bugs me, and again, this is stupid, in order to maintain orbit for all that time, obviously the ship's got to be at a particular speed. When they came out of the wormhole on the other side, they didn't have that inertia, so the ship would have been long gone before they could even realize they could use their thrusters.
Maybe they came out of the wormhole at the velocity of the orbit of the ship that happened to be nearby.
Yeah, I'm sure they got spit out at 800 kilometers a second. Yeah, that's good.
Yep. Especially Ares.
Sci-fi never considers the velocity when it comes to time travel. Like, you can never time travel because the planet's moving.
Oh, that's true.
If you go backwards a day, you're in space.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Let's keep going forward. They reach the next planet. It's a nice, peaceful purple planet where they're finding lots of cool stuff. Kanata gets attacked by the Death Orb again. And he runs away from it. He actually runs into a cave and he sees Ares. And when he turns around, the orb disappears. And he's like, okay, I figured it out. I know who it is. So he gets Zach and Charse. And he's like,
well,
okay, guys.
He doesn't quite know at that point, but he's sitting in his captain's chair and he's reliving
Oh, that's right. And he goes and he talks
the very first Death Orb. Right. And so then he asks Ares.
He has a question for Ares.
Because she's got a photographic memory. We don't know what he asks her, but we find out that who was the last one in.
So he gets Zach and Charles. He's like, guys, I know who it is. It's Olgar, and we need to trap him. So they set up this elaborate trap where Charles and Olgar go into a cave, and then they fall behind. And when they get in there, they're like, oh, never mind. We have to run back to the ship. And then
Funi's missing.
Funi's missing. The Death Orb appears, and then they jump out and they grab Charles, and they're like, dude, we knew it was you. And he has a little remote control that can drive the wormhole, and they take it from him. And he's the assassin, and he admits it. And he admits that he is actually a clone of the king. He's not just a noble, he's a clone of the king. And he's known his whole life he was a clone, and that his point was to die. And he gives this really sad backstory about,
But basically, he's still a martyr, even though he explains this whole backstory.
And his whole thing is, like, at least my life has a purpose. Like, my life is better than yours because I had a purpose. Yeah, I'm going to die. And he was willing to die in this mission, but now's a good time to talk about Charles and what you think about him. He's been the suave, romantic, cute boy that cooks for everyone, and it turns out he's the evil assassin.
I thought they did a great job in hiding the fact that he was it, and he was a good addition to the group, because he was the cook, he was the botanist, he was the biologist, and up until basically I guessed it as soon as Kanata brought Zach and Charles into the room. Was like, all right, we're gonna get Olgar. Like, it's not Olgar, and it's not Zach. Yep. So I was like, this is an elaborate trap to get Charles to produce the orb.
I've known who it was since they said it was clones, because when he revealed in his backstory there was a pink-haired girl, and I was like, okay, if it's not Ares, then Ares is the cause of it, and he knows Ares from her past, so he's got to be the killer.
That makes sense.
I started thinking that there wasn't a killer, and that was all that was all just a red herring. That entire thing, and that the whole issue was entirely because of the parents, and that they set up the thing or something else like that. But
I thought his arc was really good, and I thought it was convincing, his martyrdom. of being brainwashed. Because he ends up getting thrown in prison because Ares Ares original ends
Right.
up
So
getting murdered in a like a plot to usurp the throne.
So Ares' original clone is the princess, the daughter of the king that Charles is the clone of. She was always, that princess was always nice to him, and then when she found out that she had a clone, she didn't like clones. She had that baby taken away by one of her servants, and they ran away, and that servant raised that baby as her own, which is Ares and her mom. And Char's whole thing was, yeah, I was supposed to kill all of us, but the princess was assassinated, and I was blamed for it. But also, she was the only person who was ever nice to me. I was gonna get to bring the princess home, so I was going to kill us all. But then I realized, oh crap, I can get the princess home, and he didn't know it until the first planet when she said about the photographic memory. Then he was like, oh my god, I know who this is. That's why. That's why he turned off the death orb.
Yeah, because she has two different colored eyes, which that's what the princess had.
So now Ares knows what she is a clone of, and Charles is like, he basically is like, I wanted to kill all of you, and Conta's like, you're full of crap. I've seen you on this trip. I know you love us. You know we love you. You need to knock this off. And Charles is like, okay, well, that's kind of true. And Charles is like, what? I have a second Death Orb controller, and he makes another one, and he sends it towards himself. He's going to basically kill himself so he doesn't have to deal with this. And Kaneda does what Kaneda does, and he runs at him. He runs right at the Death Orb, and he jumps. His shoes are working again. I never told you they broke, but it's not really important. He's able to jump over the wormhole. He does the move from the first episode, the super dive bomb kick, saves Charles. And then he reaches back like he's gonna stop a wormhole.
I know. God.
And his arm goes into it, and so Charles turns it off to save him. And dude, don't stick your arm in a wormhole.
Yep.
And it cuts his arm off. And I love though, like they're treating him, and everyone's taking care of him. Charles is like, I'm sorry. He's like, you're gonna be my right hand man.
This is literally his right hand that got chopped off.
Yep.
I did love that he was Keytree was like, make his suit's right arm compress harder, or like fit smaller, and that cut off the bleeding. I thought that was really great use of the technology that they had already established.
It was a nice detail.
One more thing about the princess. Her name is Saria, which is Ares upside down. In the intro of this anime, Ares' name is always upside down and backwards. And I thought that's why she was the killer, because I thought the intro was pointing at us, and it was a clue, but it was the wrong clue.
See, that's where I think they actually did a really good job, even with like Charce's fake story. That's a great way to throw somebody off the tail of a real killer, is have the real killer be exposed and then, come up with a reasonable story.
Just so you know, everyone's friends and they all forgive Charce. He's like, hey, you should throw me in prison and I'll help you expose everyone. They're like, no, you're our friend. We forgive you. You were brainwashed. It doesn't count.
Kiznaiver. You were brainwashed. Doesn't count.
They forage and they get ready for the last leg of the trip. And then they take off. They go. Oh, and then Charce tells them the whole truth, which is basically his kingdom is the keeper of all the secrets and the keeper of all the technology. There's this whole thing of. This is my big thing. The whole reason there's two histories is because they didn't want anyone to know there was wormhole technology and use it as a weapon like that happened on Earth, because when Earth found out they were leaving for a planet, there was a giant war basically between everyone fighting over territory, every religion, every political faction, every government. And so they're like, okay, we're getting rid of that. We don't want that ever to happen again. Let's hide the wormhole technology. But if we don't have wormhole technology, we have to tell people something else. So they wind the clock back 100 years. And basically the entire world just agrees, yep.
Yeah.
Which is a bit nutty. Like I said, I really like most of the twists in this. This twist felt a little extra because it's kind of hard to swallow. Of course, you have to assume everyone that's keeping the secret also survived through a Third World War nuclear holocaust. So maybe I just can't fathom what that kind of life would be like, and would I be willing to support that life for world peace?
I think that in any kind of a group that is, we're talking in the billions here, there's gonna be some people that dissent.
Gotta be an outlier, right?
Yep.
Well, and they did mention that historians were already leading,
Right.
like finding the inconsistencies.
And the government has a faction specifically meant to keep it a secret.
I mean, in the first generation, there would already be dissenters. And so what I'm kind of surprised about is that they didn't ever really show like protests or any kind of conspiracy theories or anything like that.
For that.
And you're right, they didn't. They had a different story that they wanted to tell, or at least a different perspective they wanted to tell the story from.
That would be an interesting story to hear.
Better. Yeah. I think it would have helped.
Actually, that would be a cool side story to this universe.
There is a really cool story about the first generation of the Astra planet.
Yeah.
In this I actually had that thought. I guess I swallowed enough to get through to the ending of this because it's like, yeah, half the population was lost, and so I could see those people being desperate enough to do something crazy. I agree with Jeremy about that's just too big of a number for cohesiveness, but you are dealing with an extreme situation, so I guess I'll accept it for this anime.
Now, did you guys get the sense when you saw Paulina's spacesuit? Did you start getting the sense that it was a time jump? I mean, compared to all of them, if it was 12 years ago, I was getting really mad. I was like, her spacesuit looked like an astronaut suit. It was puffy and it looked old, and I was like, wait a minute. 12 years and they made this much technological process? I don't buy it.
I wasn't thinking time jump because I was thinking simulated reality when they were talking about the memory experiments. So I wasn't even looking. I was like, that's really different, but I'm like, what reality is she from? Why is her memory different?
Yeah.
I did notice the disparity, but I was just like, I hand waved it because I was just like, oh, maybe something else is going on or something I don't know about. But when it was 100-year difference that they rolled the clock back, I was like, that is cool. That's a cool reason for why she was there, and that means she's 112 years in that thing.
Well,
not just
I think she's 100, 140. Yeah.
She's 140.
There was also one other thing, and that was that when they were talking about the dates and that it was only 12 years ago that they must have migrated over here, and they were like, oh man, well, how did they keep that concealed that nobody knows about it? And I'm like, okay, how old are you guys? How old are you? Are any of you older than 12? It clearly didn't happen 12 years ago.
Right.
Or 6 years ago.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
All right, so on their way home, they come up with a plan. They're going to basically send all the info of everything they know to Aries' mom, and she will contact a friend of Olga's older reporter brother, who we kind of glazed over. And he's a cop, and he was sympathetic to that idea in Olga's brother's reporting. So they come out of hyperspace, basically, and send that message, and then go back to Astra. When they reach Astra, Olgar tells Charles he'll help him expose Sierra's assassin, because that's not only does the king need to go down, but there's also like a cousin off in the wing waiting to take the king's throne who would have killed the princess, and he wants to expose him. They get there, and there's 5 spaceships waiting for them. And then we jump down to the king talking to this very specific cousin, and the cops walk in and are like, yo, guess what we know? And they arrest them, and they're like, yeah, you guys are making clones, and you committed murder. You're out. You're arrested.
I like during this conversation, the slimy cousin's like, I'm just going to show my way out.
Yep.
I also like the cop being like, by the way, you have no power over us.
Yep.
We're the cops. And then we find out those 5 ships are actually there to escort the Astra home, which I was kind of worried because I'm like, yeah, how is... of course, the parents want to cover this up, but how is the world government going to feel about clones coming home and being like, oh, you're not supposed to exist, and we could just blow them up?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
But they get escorted home.
They're instant celebrities, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Kanata gets to drop his line one more time of like, you guys did a really great job, which is like, I got a little emotional at that part. I was like, okay, that's pretty good. That's a good bringing that home. They all remember their struggles and how much he saved them. Then they come down.
Okay, that moment is what got me, where they're all talking about their struggles, and they're like, yeah, but what saved me? Kanata's arm. What saved me? Oh, Kanata's arm saved me too.
And he doesn't
Oh,
have
and
an
me
arm.
too. Because he doesn't have an arm.
And I cut off his arm.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah, I was like, oh man, I felt that. Okay.
The parents are all arrested. Aries' mom and the press meet them when they land. They become instant celebrities. The ship is put into a museum because it's technically 100 years, for 100 years old. They get the government to concede to the fact of the truth about the world history to come out. I don't know how I feel about the theme of world peace can't be earned through a lie. Like, if you have world peace, it might be worth it being based on a lie. I'm just saying.
Well, I think Kitari says that. So, I mean, they are leaving that open as an option.
Okay.
But I definitely, me, I definitely don't agree with it. I'm like, truth or bust, man.
Yeah, I get that. Okay. Sharsh becomes the king. Koichi becomes a model. Kanata becomes rich by writing a book about their trip. They all graduate high school. Then we go 7 years into the future. We see Olgar visiting his father. He's a reporter now.
Well, we have to make mention that before this, Zach asked Kanata, how long is it going to take you to get your ship? Because he's like, will you be my pilot? And he's like, yeah, I'll be your pilot, but how long is it going to take you to get your ship? He's like, 7 years.
Yep. And so,
Calls it off.
Yep. Guys, Olgar shows up to interview Paulina, and Funi, who is now in high school and Paulina is her teacher, is like, are you guys dating? And Olgar's like, ha ha ha, bye, drives off in his car. But then we get the scene with Luca, who's like, yeah, he slept over at my place last night, and Luca's now dressing much more feminine, which makes me wonder, like, did his body evolve until he got to the point where he now feels more like a woman?
He did say that. He said, I don't know what's going to happen as my body changes. I may change my mind.
And everyone blushes when he says that line too. So is Olgar just like?
Well, it gets worse. You missed
one. Mofo.
Okay, you missed one. You missed one because Funi says, she holds up the little dog thing and she says, I want to go for a ride in your car. And he looks at her and he says, soon. And I'm like, oh my God, Olgar. Oh my God.
So you got that. I'm like, I think Olgar's just killing it.
It's everywhere.
All right.
So
an investigative journalist. That's right.
Kichi and Zach are married. Aries and Kanata are now engaged and hoping to have a kid soon. Yunhao is having a big concert that all of her friends are invited to, and she dedicates it to the trip they had 7 years ago. And then we go to the reason Zach and Kanata aren't at the concert is Kanata used his book money to buy the ship back. He bought the Astra from the museum, and they're now going to go exploring and placing wormhole locations throughout the galaxy, and they're getting ready to take off. And he has a new robot arm that Zach built him that has a drill bit, and he's like, I don't need a drill bit.
Why couldn't you give me a missile launcher? Build it yourself.
Yeah, he's like, someone, my arm can shoot missiles, and they're like, and Zach's like, I didn't build that function, but you put in a drill bit. And then Sharsh shows up, and they're like, aren't you supposed to be the king? He's like, yeah, but I promised I'd be your right-hand man. So the three of them go into space, and that's the end.
And also, he released a ton of political power.
Yeah, they said he released his power, and he exposed all the secrets of the kingdom. So he's kind of just a figurehead now.
So he's basically the Queen of England at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the end. Let's go to our final reviews. Jason.
There's a lot about it that I love, and there's a little bit about it that I'm not too fond of. I'm kind of leaning towards a 3, but I'm going to give it a 4. I really enjoyed my ride with it, and rediscussing it with you guys. It had some really decent qualities about it, and the storytelling was well done. I think the writers did a really good job with it.
Okay. Jeremy?
So I really want to give it a 3, but I have to give it a 4. And I think, again, it comes from the expectation that I had at the very beginning, where I really thought this was going to be a bit more suspenseful, a bit more thrilling, more at stakes. And it wasn't. And that's kind of on me having that expectation, because it very clearly is marked as a comedy genre. And it knows it, and it calls itself out for it. So yeah, I actually did really enjoy it. And I'm glad that it was a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. I don't know if I would have found it that entertaining if it was something that would continue with season after season after season. It was a good story, though.
This anime, to be honest, is a 3, but I'm also going to give it a 4 because a good mystery conspiracy story that has a satisfying conclusion is really hard to pull off, and
Yes.
I was into it. No matter whether I was enjoying it or not, there wasn't a moment didn't want to keep going forward to figure out what was going on. I was pulled along, I was hooked, and like that ending was satisfying to find out we were clones, our parents made us, and they tried to kill us, and like that everything made sense. Everyone's backstory fit into that puzzle perfectly. It was so satisfying of an ending that I'll give it a 4 for that. So that's my thought.
And Kanata starting off as one of the most irritating tropey anime characters, and loving him by the end kind of irritates me.
Yep.
Yeah, I was telling Jeremy before we hit record, like the fact that I went on the same journey with liking this character that the other characters did is kind of mind-boggling.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Our next anime
is Dimension High School.
No, it is
the
not.
newest isekai on the block.
I'm trying to end the show so you can go to bed, but yeah,
know.
you just keep making your jokes.
I appreciate the hustle.
All right. We're watching One Punch Man Season 2. This is Jeremy's pick, and this is the real pick he told me we were picking.
Yes.
Now, we have not done as a full episode One Punch Man Season 1, but we did do a mini-sode on it back in mini-sode something or other. We'll link it in our...
65, I think it is.
64, 65, yeah. So we do have a mini-sode where we talk about our thoughts on this first season, but we're going to go into Season 2 as if we've talked about Season 1 like we frequently do. So just know that, but we are watching the second season of One Punch Man. I've already seen it, and I'm really excited to watch it again. These guys will be seeing it for the first time. If you have thoughts on Astra Lost in Space, if you have thoughts on Valley Girl accents or the anime we're going to be watching next, you can reach us on our Twitter at Baka Podcast or email the animebakaclub@gmail.com or leave a comment wherever you found the podcast, and they'll get back to us. We really appreciate those who reach out. So keep doing that. Is there anything else, guys, or are we ready to take off for Parts Unknown?
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Did they do that in the dub?
Yes.
Bye.
Bye, Nara.